So now I'm going to get the rear bank in time and then verify using the special tools, and then we'll proceed to take this cam gear off and get it onto the special tool. I just tested a few things and looks like an M5 bolt seems to work reasonably well to keep the exhaust cam scissor gear in place while we are working with it. The factory manual doesn't mention anything, but this is a tip from Cranky Gypsy's write-up. So what we are looking to do to get the engine in time is there are two places to put these pins into. So the big pin, threaded pin, goes in here. So you see this hole right here between these two gears. So this will thread in and it'll match up with a divot in the actual crank, one of the webs of the crank. And then as this spins around, there's a hole in this cam cap, or what they call a U-bolt, that will match up with a hole in this gear that this pin slides into. So as I was playing with it, I found the most effective way to get these two pins in is to slide this in first, and that pretty much should assure that the pin that goes into the crankcase should be right in place, or very close at least. The other thing to also note is there are 3 dots, so I think it's 2 on this gear and 1 on this gear, that mesh together right in the middle here, and all these things being aligned means your engine is in time. I'm going to try and show this the best that I can. So I spun this engine around, and when IR is basically almost vertical or a little past vertical, seems to be the position for these to line up. And then the first thing I did was I inserted this pin through this hole in this gear and into the hole in the U-bolt here, so, or the cam cap, and this kind of locks the cam in place. And then if you come down here, in theory you should be able to see the divot. I'm gonna see if I can unscrew this and demonstrate where the divot in the crank is. But I also found that if you look through this hole, you can see the divot in the crank a little bit better. So if you look, you can sort of see the divot back there. I don't know how much of this is coming through in the camera. So if you look through this opening here, you can actually see the divot in the crank much better than you can see it through the hole into which you thread the pin. So as I'm threading the pin in, I'm looking at that hole, and I can see the crank pin or the pin engage into the divot in the crank. There's also another hole up here through which you can see the crank webs. It's a machine surface, it has circular grooves in it, and then it's very clear, the divot is very clear. It's probably really hard to see it on camera, but in person it's quite clear. So this is lined up, and I look through here, I can see look through that hole. It's kind of hard to get the light and the camera in there. I don't know. Yeah, as I look through that hole, I think you can see the threaded pin, end of the thread pin engage into the divot in the crank. This is pretty obvious. You can see this pin going through this gear that the chain is riding on and into the U-bolt, and then right there you can see the 3 dots. So the 1 dot on this gear and 2 dots on this gear are meshed, and right in the middle it is right here, right at this point. It should be pretty clear to see. This means the engine is perfectly timed. At least the rear bank is perfectly timed. So I'm going to stick this M5 bolt in here. So you can see this gear is split, and that is essentially held in spring tension against this gear. And so this is called a scissor gear and keeps gear rattle to a minimum. So now what we need to do is take these pins back out. I find that it needs a little bit of back and forth, a little bit. Get this pin back out. Yeah, if you go a little bit forward, it seems to help to get the pin out. Now the manual says to move this forward till we have access to this bolt, rotate the crank forward till we have access to this bolt, and then spin this bolt off. Let's just go reconfirm that in the manual. Yeah, you need to block the crankshaft rotation. We are going to do that using the Motion Pro gear jammer, and then remove the gear bolt. So that should give us enough access. Now we're going to be turning this guy counterclockwise, so it's going to pull on the chain this way up. So we're going to need to block the counterclockwise rotation of this, essentially. That should jam the gear right in there. So you can see this guy is jamming these two gears together, so they can't rotate counterclockwise anymore. They cannot rotate that way. Oh, it's a 13 mm. These have thread lock on them, and it is recommended that these bolts be changed every time you take them off. So I have new ones on order. They should be here. So now we're going to smoothly rotate this guy forward and then have our gear jammer fall out, and then keep rotating. I think it's going to be 450 degrees, at least till we, yep. And then, yep, what I noticed was, so you remember IR, the marking IR on the stone wheel was like right here. So we did a 360, came back all the way here, plus 90 degrees, so 450 degrees, and that puts it kind of facing this way. And this makes sure that none of our valve springs are under tension, so all the cams are essentially riding on their base circle at this point, pretty much. So again, we'll reinstall our gear jammer. I'll very slightly turn it backwards so that it is able to jam the gears correctly. And then I'm going to take this guy off. So both these guys are off. Now you need to leave this on here, and we're going to take this cam cap off and this bolt, and then extract this oil pipe as well as this cam cap. So before I do that, I'm going to organize a space to put all this stuff when we take it off, because don't want to be leaving it willy-nilly. I'm getting all the excess oil out of the tops of the bolts so that we can get full engagement. Last thing I want to do is strip these bolts. Just cleaning these for later. I don't know why it always stinks when you take cam cap bolts off. It smells nasty. Oil tubes out. Cam cap is off. There's a tiny amount of wear, but nothing I'd be concerned about. I'm going to put a couple of zip ties and make sure this chain never comes off of the cam gear. Now I'm going to mount this special tool onto the head here. So the reason we took this particular cam cap off first is so that this tool can mount on top of it. This tool is not perfect. It's quite far from perfect, in fact. I've heard that many folks can't get the second bolt to thread in, and I was afraid ours was going to be the same, but with a little bit of flex it seems to have threaded in there reasonably well. So once we have the gear on there, we bolt this in to make sure the gear doesn't move when we don't want it to. Okay, I have also heard that you can have some trouble popping this gear off and moving it onto this tool. That actually slid on like really smoothly. That went way better than I expected it to. So the reason we need to do all this is because the cam chain tensioner is deep in the bowels of the engine, and we can't access it with the engine in the frame, and we cannot retime the engine and put everything back without the cam chain tensioner pushing the chain away and making it lose tension. So if we could extract the cam chain tensioner and then do all this, we wouldn't need to do all this drama. Okay, as far as I can tell, this is resting on here. So very carefully, without dropping this, this does not need to get torqued down. It's enough if it's hand tight. It just has to keep the gear from sliding this way. So next we need to take the other two cam caps off. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 bolts left, and these need to come off slowly and evenly so that we don't put any unnecessary tension on the cam, because the valve springs are obviously pushing up against the cams. They shouldn't be. This is in a position where none of the valve springs are active, but in any case you should take this off nice and even so that you don't bend the camshafts by holding one and loosening the other. So since this one's taken off, let's go the other. Like an 1/8 of a turn at a time, no more than that. Just crack it loose. I know we have timing marks on the cams, and maybe there's a procedure to put it back where it came from, but at least I would like to know the position these cams were in when we are pulling them out. It seems like it's totally flush with this here, but there's still some resistance to me pulling this cam out. Just a little bit of finagling. There's a little bit more wear on this cam journal than I would like to see. This journal looks fine. These look pretty good. Okay, but a little bit more wear on this. Although I can't catch my fingernail on it, still some wear. There's a small scratch on this guy, but all the other buckets look perfect. I mean, even that one's basically perfect. Like, you wouldn't consider that any major wear. The shims we're looking for are sitting under here. Okay, I am pretty sure I goofed up here, so at least I had the sense to mark these. I think I was supposed to rotate the crank far enough so that all these pins actually line up again. Obviously I didn't, or at least I think I didn't. Well, see, this divot, no, this divot is nowhere near. So I mean, the crank is in a fixed position and I know how the cams came out since I marked them, so it shouldn't be a problem to put it back exactly as it came out. And then we can obviously do the timing verification again once we get it back together. But yeah, word of caution to you if you're attempting this. I thought I had it right, but I clearly hadn't read the procedure well enough. So that's the little shim we're looking for. This is the bucket, and that's the actual top of the valve. What you see in the middle is the top of the valve stem, and the valve spring is sitting under this, and it's held in by two little collets. And you can kind of see that in there. In any case, trying to see if we can see a measurement on here. Nope, doesn't tell me anything. Okay, let's take a measurement of this guy. I measured this shim, this little guy. It's a 2.504 as far as I can tell. Call that 2.504. So that's still a decimal point away. So within a couple of decimals we should be fine. we have everything on the rear bank measured. Now I'm going to go away and calculate what we need to get everything back into spec, at least at the upper end of spec. I have all the calculations done. I have a sheet on which I've Google sheet on which I've done these calculations, and I'm going to share those. I'll link it in the bottom of the video, somewhere down there. Anyway, so I'm going to swap the shims out, and I think I'm missing one shim. I need so the shim kit that I have comes with 3 shims in each size, and it looks like I need more than a 2.2 mm shims, 2.20 mm shims. But I'm going to swap out all the ones that I can right now. I have the extra shim on order from AF1. That should be here not too long from now.